Yes, I do see me and you see me and you, but as I look around this room, I see myself in all of you as well.
Ah, to be a celebrity and get applauded for saying the dumbest things. It's funny, isn't it? The pedestals that we put undeserving people on simply because they're rich and famous. People who are entirely unqualified. People who have absolutely nothing of value to offer. People who take away value, in fact, from otherwise valuable and meaningful things. Take activism, for instance. You know, that concept that's meant to be altruistic in nature, done for the greater good of society or humanity as a whole. Well, you see, there are some people who perhaps may have taken the Shakespearean quote of "all the world's a stage" a little too literally. I'm talking about these performers who systematically hijack legitimate causes such as championing mental health and gender equality and fighting discrimination and everything else of the sort with nary an altruistic motive and purely to boost their own social capital. So think perhaps someone who says racism is wrong, but then does absolutely nothing to try to remedy the issue and may in fact be a raging racist themselves. Or how about someone who claims to be a feminist and that women should use their voice, only to discover that they're more akin to a raging misogynist who bullies women and tries to silence any female who falls short of worshiping them, and yet lives for seducing men and using them to get what they want. Or perhaps someone who claims to champion mental health and openly advocates against cyberbullying, all while they made an actual career out of harassing and disparaging their own family. Starting to paint a clearer picture for you, right? One that looks eerily similar to Meghan Markle and, yes, let's say Prince Harry. Now don't get me wrong, they're far from the only celebrities who engage in this type of behavior. Performative activists are everywhere. They're on your social media feed right now. In fact, you may be living with one, or friends with one, or dare I say, in love with one? We all know at least someone who perhaps thinks highly of themselves simply because they made a post or a selfie, shared something, or a hashtag. When I think we can all agree that it takes a bit more than that to actually make a difference. But no one, at least in my opinion, has been as guilty of performative activism as Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Of all the farcical awards they've been given, performative activists of the decade would be very well deserved indeed. So seeing as we've already covered throughout these past few years all of Meghan and Harry's faux humanitarian acts before their Nigerian quote-unquote private visit, today we'll be using two scenarios from Nigeria, since it is very recent, to demonstrate just how performative they both generally are, but particularly Meghan. On the first day of their Nigerian faux royal tour, Harry and Meghan went to a mental health summit at a school, which was organized by, you guessed it, Archwell, which I'm convinced at this point solely exists for them to rake in the moolah and as an opportunity for them to secure all these summits and panels and speaking opportunities, because otherwise no one actually wants them around. So they have to organize it themselves. But this is the event where Meghan thought it was a great idea to show up at a school half naked wearing a flesh-colored dress. And as per usual, these two hopped on stage and very briefly spoke about the importance of mental health. I know, the irony, it never ceases to astound me.
And there is no shame to be able to acknowledge that today is a bad day.
I have to say, Harry's speech, on the face of it, is okay. Honestly, I wouldn't even have that much of a problem with an unqualified person like him speaking out about mental health issues and drawing from their own personal experiences, had he not been, along with his wife, a major cause of the stress and anguish and unhappiness that they surely inflicted upon their families on both sides. Oh, and also, don't the Baka people deserve to have their mental health looked after? It's pretty difficult when they've got rangers terrorizing them, probably as we speak. Once we move on to Meghan, we get a very familiar brand of word salad. I mean, there really isn't any other way to explain it, is there?
Do you see why I'm married to him? He's so smart. Yes, I do see me and you see me and you, but as I look around this room, I see myself in all of you as well.
You know you're bad when Prince Harry gives a better talk than you do. Zero connection, zero depth, zero interest. You can sense the lack of it all through the screen. It's almost palpable. And of course, in classic Meghan style, she couldn't help but start off the speech by making it about her. You see why I married him? You see why I deemed him good enough for the likes of me? So what value did the kids get out of this 5-minute or so speech? What tools were they given to utilize at a time of crisis, perhaps? What people or organizations were they given to contact in times of need? I mean, sure, if you look at the blurb on their website, they claim that they've partnered with the GEANCO, G-E-A-N-C-O Foundation, which focuses on saving and transforming lives in Africa through various medical and financial methods. So a good cause, as usual, and also, as per usual, this foundation seems to be doing all the heavy lifting. And we saw the same thing with their visit to Save the Children, an organization which has its own fair share of problems, which we did discuss in podcast 98 a few weeks ago. But all Meghan and Harry did was show up with professional photographers, talk, post for pictures, and Bob's your uncle. And if you don't believe me and think they did more, just read the official press statement released on the Save the Children website for yourselves. All Meghan and Harry did was talk. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the hallmark of a performative activist. It's all talk, or post, and absolutely zero walk. As the late Larry King told Meghan,
well, we're certainly talking about it enough.
Oh, we're talking, but words are easy.
And it's funny because in classic Meghan fashion, she absorbed what he said in that interview and added it as an ingredient to her word salad, which she tossed and served up in the Create and Cultivate event a few months after her interview with him, when she said,
if there is a problem out there and we have the means to talk about it and not just retweet it and not just come up with some hashtag, but to really find the call to action and do something about it, then I completely believe that it's our responsibility to do it.
So here's what I think a true activist would have done in their position. For starters, no cameras and no fanfare. To me, documenting an ostensibly good deed for the entire world to see only serves to water down the altruistic nature of activism. If you're doing it for show, are you really doing it for the cause? Secondly, a true activist would make sure that the opportunity afforded to them to make a change is never squandered. Meaning they'd be honest with themselves and understand that perhaps they may not be the most appropriate or qualified person to talk about that particular topic. What do Meghan and Harry know about mental health? Nothing. I mean, other than knowing how to destroy it. You seriously think they would have set foot in that school and spent a minute with those children if it wasn't going to benefit their own social capital? A true activist would have perhaps arranged for a local Nigerian mental health expert, like a psychologist, who may not be known, they may not be famous, but they would have the knowledge and experience and skills to be able to impart valuable information to these children in as short a time frame as possible. And if they did that, then they'd also be showcasing a promising local talent, and they could help promote their practice perhaps if they have one, or they may help promote or elevate their career. They may become the school psychologist. Who knows? Opportunities may come up. And to me, that would truly benefit the community in a very meaningful way rather than simply for show. And again, this concept isn't foreign to Meghan, because this is what she had to say in 2016 about shining a light on people who you may never have heard of otherwise and who have something valuable to say.
So that is part of what I really try to harness on the site in terms of pushing out those kinds of people. People that you might not have heard about, but you should.
Or how about giving the spotlight to someone who is an expert in a specific field, who would be more equipped to talk about that area than yourself?
I don't purport to know everything about everything, and I wouldn't want to. The fun part of this whole thing is being able to say, but she does, and how cool is she? And here you go, take the reins, whomever, and share with them all this great stuff.
But are we surprised that she's yet again not practicing what she preaches? I mean, it's pretty much a full-time hobby of hers. And the same can be said about every other bandwagon that they force themselves into through their foundation. They don't have to be on stage to make a difference, but they constantly choose to anyway, because it's never been about the cause, and it's always been about them. The next event Meghan waltzed her way into through Archewell was the Women in Leadership Conference, with the Archewell name and logo emblazoned right there as a huge advertisement behind the stage, with no one in the room at that point aware that it was pretty much delinquent and not allowed to operate, at least not in California. So this event was moderated by self-made billionaire and media mogul Mo Abudu, with the Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, as one of the guests featured, with the other one, of course, being Meghan, which really puzzled me, as it always does when I see Meghan speaking at these things. Because as I looked at her sitting there, dressed as the red dancing emoji, which she ironically hates.
When it comes to emojis and emoticons, I've got a serious problem with the chick in the red dress.
Or what I thought actually at first was a flamenco dancer. And I mean no offense to the designer, by the way. It is a beautiful Nigerian design, a stunning color on Meghan. Actually, she should wear that color more often. But there is a time and a place for dressing like a flamenco dancer, Meghan, and a daytime business event is not it. But as I looked at her there, without even knowing anything about the other two women alongside her, I was left wondering, what on earth is she doing at a talk about leadership and mentorship? Meghan's not a leader. I mean, she has zero experience in the field. I made a whole video almost 2 years ago now about this entire topic. It was called The Role Model, I think. And obviously I was being sarcastic. It's like, how is Meghan Markle a role model? All people can model themselves after is her grift, her social climbing, which I must admit has been very impressive. So you can imagine my bewilderment when I actually researched Dr. Ngozi and Mo as well. I watched numerous talks and interviews they've given, and while they are both very different women, they are incredibly impressive, inspirational, highly intelligent, hardworking, and capable women who are such a credit to Nigeria. Mo, as an entrepreneur, is all about hard work and resilience and offers such a wealth of knowledge on how to start a business, how to source the best employees, how to land clients, get investors and sponsors, and how to start a talk show with zero experience and how much work goes into that, how to start a TV channel with zero experience, and the many hurdles that come with that, how to be a mother while you have to deal with all of that. And Meghan herself, as a wannabe entrepreneur with her latest venture, American Race Baiting Orchestra, could have taken this golden opportunity to learn from Mo in particular, seeing as she is an expert in the field of entrepreneurialism. Blah. I hate that word. Although I will say that after hearing this particular Google talk that Mo gave, which I will be linking in the description box, it is incredibly informative, and if anyone out there wants to know what it takes to start a business and has aspirations, I highly recommend you listen to it. But I bet that she could sniff Meghan from way off, all the way from Montecito, and was simply playing nice. Because this is what she had to say about the Meghan Markles of the world.
You can pretty much suss out people that work hard and people that are just BSing. I'm sorry to say that, you know. I mean, there are a lot of people that they're all talk and they're just not going to do the work, and I can't deal with that.
And she also had this to say about Meghan's idea of motherhood. Now, I'm not a mother, but we all know she's never with her kids.
You need to spend quality time with your children, because I find a lot of housewives that call themselves housewives, They're not even at home half the time. They're probably out having lunch or doing their nails or somewhere. So, but they have deceived themselves that they are there.
So yeah, I don't think they're going to be joining forces anytime soon to start a new venture together, no matter how many jars of jam Meghan throws Mo's way. On the other end of the stage, you have Dr. Ngozi, who was also Nigeria's first female finance minister and first female foreign minister. And just as much as Mo in her hard work and drive and resilience is the exact opposite of Meghan, Dr. Ngozi in her care for the community and improving her country and improving the lot of her people is the exact opposite of Meghan's obsession with herself. And she appeared to have zero interest in talking about herself unless she was specifically asked a personal question. And both of these women, despite experiencing setbacks and hurdles and glass ceilings, are optimists who have a mentality of making delicious sweet lemonade out of life's incredibly bitter lemons. And that is inspiring. Dr. Ngozi frequently talked about making the most of a crisis, using it as an opportunity, turning it around to work for you and the community that you serve. Both women also don't serve up word salad a la Meghan Markle. Every word that comes out of their mouth is useful, measured, and to the point. And finally, both women have no interest in dwelling on any failures or hardships in conversation. They acknowledge them, but then they talk about how they triumphed because, unlike Meghan, they don't have a victimhood mentality. No successful person does, especially someone at their levels of success. In the words of Dr. Ngozi,
seize the moment, be yourself, move forward.
Advice that perpetual victims like Meghan Markle would do well to heed. But will she? Of course not. Because all she was interested in on that stage was the sound of her own voice. And because she's entirely lacking in the depth and humility that is required to understand one's own shortcomings. So how is she going to have any hope of addressing them if she refuses to acknowledge their existence in the first place? She is so lacking in any insight, so lacking in self-awareness, that she chose to elevate herself to the level of these women, even though she is, as I said, the antithesis of what they represent. Strength, perseverance, confidence, capability, intelligence, independence. And this dichotomy was really evident every single time Meghan opened her mouth.
Oftentimes when women reach the peak of success, they leave. But you need to come back home.
She was way out of her depth with this one. I'm actually surprised that she deluded herself into getting onto that stage with these two women because it did her no favors. You know, it highlighted all of her weaknesses, her narcissism, her lack of depth and knowledge. It reminded me of how basic and shallow and uninformed she sounded next to Starbucks CEO Melody Hobson at that New York Times book deal summit 3 years ago. I think what happens is people like Meghan, and I've talked about this in my Demise of the Girl Boss or Girl Tyrant video a few months ago. They mistake being bossy and mean and cruel and even being a bully with being a strong, independent, fierce female leader. Or I should say leader, full stop, because as I said in that video, gender doesn't even factor into it. But now let's talk about what a true activist would have done in Meghan Markle's shoes in this scenario. A true activist and a proponent of female leadership would have had the requisite insight and humility to understand that in a room full of successful Nigerian women, perhaps the spotlight shouldn't be on them, as in on Meghan, and on her inane ramblings and on her questionable genealogy, or how she's supposedly
brave, resilient, courageous, powerful, beautiful.
Or about successful women going back home. And that last point, by the way, in my opinion, I think she likely rambled on about to justify why she went back to the States. Except, I'd hate to break it to you, Meghan, you're not a successful woman. You're a trophy wife. If Archwell wants to sponsor these sessions, if she wants to butt herself into it somehow, fine, do that. But she should have been the moderator. If Meghan truly cared about the cause, then her role would have been limited to eliciting the wealth of knowledge from these highly intelligent, successful, experienced, and self-made Nigerian women, 2 of whom were on the stage with her, but some of whom were likely in the room. There are other examples of incredible Nigerian women who serve as role models and leaders in their own field that perhaps weren't in the room, but would have done such a great job on stage, in my opinion. How about Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie? Another incredibly talented, intelligent, well-spoken, and beautiful Nigerian woman. I mean, seriously, Nigeria, you guys have seriously won the lottery when it comes to both beauty and brains. But she's someone who is able to talk about sensitive topics like racism, sexism, even censorship in a very unaffected and measured way, without making it her brand or identity. She acknowledges that it exists. She often talks about, for example, how it manifested in her life. But then, just like Dr. Ngozi and Mo, she talks about how she excelled despite it, instead of playing a dirty game of identity politics and making a career out of perceived victimhood, as Meghan Markle does. By the way, I've also linked my favorite interviews and talks from Dr. Ngozi and Chimamanda in the description box, along with the Mo Google Talk. So again, I highly recommend you listen to these women, and you will just have your mind blown in terms of how they were even in the same building as Meghan, let alone sharing a stage. I mean, they must have been very patient with her. Or maybe they should have invited the First Lady of Nigeria. The topic of role models came up during this session. So the First Lady, she mentioned role models in her speech about naked women and dressing appropriately in Nigeria. Maybe she could have talked about that there and the importance of Nigerian women looking up to people such as Mo and Dr. Ngozi and the First Lady herself and Chimamanda, instead of wannabe starlets who thought they were at the Met Gala when they were actually addressing a school. I mean, I bet there were people at the Met Gala who were dressed more appropriately than Meghan. Here's the deal. Performative activism can actually do more harm to a cause than good. I mean, first of all, the performers are usually embarrassing and distracting and have no interest in promoting the cause itself. So it would only be natural that they would have a negative impact on it. People will stop taking the cause seriously. We've seen this happen. I mean, all these feminist Women of Leadership awards Meghan has been getting, it means nothing anymore. Even their titles, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, mean nothing anymore. Anything they attach themselves to diminishes in value. I personally wish that Mo and Dr. Ngozi didn't give Meghan Markle the time of day. I really do. Not only because they're potentially, accidentally legitimizing her and her platform simply by association, but also because there is that risk of the general public who don't know anything about Mo, for instance, and may just assume that because she's associating with Meghan, she's cut from the same cloth. I mean, it's just a bad look. Although, I have to say, I don't doubt that these incredibly switched on and whip smart, as Meghan likes to say, women were simply playing nice. Mo is an avid researcher and a stickler for preparation. So I wouldn't be surprised if she saw right through Meghan, as I said, and was simply being a TV presenter for the event. I mean, that used to be her job for a while. Even Dr. Ngozi contradicted Meghan in a way by stating the truth, which is that competence is not based on gender or race. You're either a capable person or not. And you shouldn't be given handouts simply because you're a woman of color, for instance.
It's not about being a woman, and it's not about being African. It's about being the best person to manage that organization at this time.
I would like to think that everyone in that room could see right through Meghan. Because as I said, if Meghan were truly a feminist, then she wouldn't be afraid to shine a light on women who actually had something of value to say. She wouldn't be too insecure to share the limelight with pioneers and actual role models. And she most definitely wouldn't feel a compulsive need to constantly hog the limelight. I have to say, I learned more from listening to Mo, for instance, talk for 5 minutes about being a business owner and starting up a business than I have learned from years of listening to Meghan's word salad. On the contrary, I actually feel like I lose brain cells whenever I listen to Meghan speak. What can I say? It's an occupational hazard.